management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Glad that you could be with us today. We have another wonderful program for you. This is a program for you, the family caregiver. If you are caring for someone that can't care for themselves, especially someone that has some form of dementia like Alzheimer's or some other related type of dementia, this program is for you to learn about what you need to know to make your caregiving journey a little bit better. So we focus on things that are going to educate you on the disease, but we also focus on things that you, the family caregiver, needs to know in order to have quality of life, not only for your loved one, but also for yourself. So today we're going to be talking about what we need to know as we get older. And of course, the number one really risk factor for getting Alzheimer's disease is age. And that's the number one risk factor. And as we age, we get older, things happen to us physically, mentally, cognitively, and we need to know what's going to happen to us, how we're going to plan our life, and the things that we need to know to make sure that we have a good life and that we have quality of life. And one of the things that a lot of people put off for a long time is getting into the legal aspect of their life. And you're talking about documents like power of attorney and living wills and healthcare surrogates. But it gets even more complicated than that. We have family dynamics. There's a lot going on, especially if you have a second marriage and maybe your new spouse has dementia and they have children, you have children. It gets kind of messy sometimes. And so we're going to be talking about that today with an elder law attorney. And I'm very excited to have her with us because she has been helping families in the elder law arena for 23 years. She is a professional. She has a wonderful practice, a great heart, lots of knowledge, and lots of experience. She meets the needs of not only the elderly and disabled people, but she helps them with things like estate planning and incapacity planning, long-term care planning. She, in 2009, formed what we're going to be talking about today, her company, and it's called Florida Elder Law Concepts. And her name is Sherry Brenner. She is here with us today in the studio.
Hi there.
Hi,
Thank
Sherry.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
I'm so happy that you're here. Looking forward to our discussion today
Most
because
definitely.
this is so important. And a lot of people that I've talked to through all the years, the 20 years that I've been helping families in dealing with dementia-related issues,
Of course.
a lot of times they have no idea of what they need to do. I mean, they're so focused on the caregiving aspect, the
Correct.
day-to-day, that they don't think ahead. And so this program, as you know, is dedicated to helping caregivers to plan. And we always say, an informed, educated caregiver is a better caregiver.
Absolutely.
And I know that you help a lot of caregivers, a lot of families, and you're going to help a lot today, I know.
Okay.
And so this is where we're
It'll
at.
be my pleasure.
But you are board certified. You're a board certified elder law attorney.
Correct.
And
By
so
the state of Florida.
by
yes.
the state of Florida, right? Matter of fact, I found out
Okay.
that you are one of only 117 in the entire state of Florida
Correct.
that's designated by the Florida Bar as a board certified elder law attorney.
That's correct.
So,
There aren't that many of us in the States.
and you're here with us, and so you see,
Well.
we bring great people onto the show. That we have the experts. We're always bringing the experts to our audience, and so thank you for being here today.
Absolutely.
So the first thing that I want to ask you, because obviously you're an attorney, but your designation is elder law attorney.
Correct.
A lot of people may not know that designation. They may have a real estate attorney. They may have a general attorney, maybe some other tax attorney, something like that. But why is there something called elder law attorney? Why is there a special designation for that?
Okay. Well, most people, when they think of elder law, they think of, let's say, Medicaid planning, and they say, well, what about my estate planning attorney? Aren't you covering the same things? And estate planning has been around for literally hundreds of years. It predates this country. But elder law started really as an offshoot, if you want to call, of estate planning. So I'm going to generalize what estate planning is.
Okay.
I mean, really general. Estate planning says, I'm going to help you put in place a plan to get your estate to your heirs or your beneficiaries, the ones that you want it to go to, when you pass, and with the people you want in charge. So your executor, in Florida we call it a personal representative. And we're going to help you so that Uncle Sam, I hate to say this, is going to be less of a beneficiary.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, that sounds great. And I work with and know many wonderful estate planning attorneys, and that's their specialty.
Right.
And yes, the Florida Bar does have a certification in wills, trusts, and estates. Elder law hasn't been around that long. I'd say probably maybe 30 years or so.
Okay.
And said, yes, we want to do all of those things, but wait, I may be retired for 30, 40 years. I may not be healthy for those 30 or 40 years. I want to make sure while I'm still alive that if I can't manage my own affairs, that the people I want to manage them, my affairs, are the ones who do that. I want to make sure that my bills get paid. I want to make sure that my care is done as I want it to be. And I want the people I choose to make those decisions. If I'm incapacitated, and if someone has not planned, and we'll talk about planning, if I have not planned and I am no longer capable of managing my own affairs, I could wind up in our court system, and then if the court, after due process, okay, it's not overnight or judge just signs off, no, you can't do that. No, there's a whole process to guardianship, but if the court determines me to be incapacitated, it's a judge appointing who's going to be
So
my
is
guardian.
that kind of what happened prior to elder law coming into play, where maybe many years ago people didn't have a choice and they'd let things just happen
know.
naturally, or was this to prevent people from going down the wrong path?
Well, I think part of what fed into the creation was that we were living longer. And medical science made huge advances. I have had clients who didn't need care until after a second or a third stroke. When I was younger, that was unheard of. also, when it comes to, we talk about dementia, you mentioned dementia earlier, one of the biggest risk factors is age.
Right.
So with living longer, it became more prevalent. So planning for those circumstances became extra important.
Okay.
And one thing to differentiate, we talk about functional decline or cognitive decline. So functional decline, you need help with, getting dressed or showering, things of that nature. There's cognitive decline, where the issue really is supervision, just to stay safe. So the need for planning became more important, because for many of my clients who are just functionally declining, I don't mean to say just, but who are functionally declining, they may have some home health care to help with those activities. But for many of my clients who are cognitively impaired, they need greater supervision, which is increased cost, and we need to talk about having a plan.
So the elder law, from what I hear you saying, the elder
Sure.
law is designed to help people as they age to age better, to have better quality of life according to what they want their life to be, and to make sure that they get everything that they need in the right way at the right time. And it encompasses a lot of things.
It really does, and the important part is planning. Very important to plan, and not just from the legal perspective, from the practical perspective also. And when I'm meeting with clients, I talk about the law and I talk about reality. And
Two different things altogether sometimes. Right.
Sometimes. But it's important to plan.
Yes.
And how we plan, it's very crucial. And as technology changes, it's important that we keep our plans updated in
boy,
light of technology.
I can see we're going to have a lot of things to talk about here. One thing that I'd like to ask
Sure.
you, you've been doing this for 23 years. You probably started when you were 15.
Oh, thank you, Marcia.
Why did you choose elder law specifically to practice? Do you have a personal experience in this field of some?
Actually, I do.
You do. Do you mind sharing that with
Oh,
us?
no, not at all. Back in the 90s, I became my grandfather's caregiver.
Oh.
I was the only family in Florida, and my grandfather was declining in age and in his care needs, and I fell into being a caregiver.
You were thrown into it because that's what usually happens.
I just did it. And I was coordinating doctor's appointments. I was making sure that the doctors did right by him. And my grandfather was of a generation and I know many wonderful doctors, and I don't mean to say this to denigrate any of them, because there are fantastic physicians here in Palm Beach County. But not all of them, just like lawyers have to have a connection with their clients, doctors need to have a connection and listen to their patients. And unfortunately, he had several doctors who weren't listening. They heard what he said. They were wonderful diagnosticians, but they weren't listening. And I had to coordinate his care. And I was his caregiver for a number of years, and I walked the dementia journey. From the initial decline, where the only thing consistent is its inconsistency, and to the eventual necessity for safety reasons of placement until his passing. Walked the journey when he became nonverbal. And all of the coordination that was required on that journey. So yes, I started practicing elder law while I was on that journey.
Yeah, you were definitely boots on the ground, right? Like a lot of caregivers today, they don't expect this to happen. It's just something that all of a sudden just creeps up on them, and all of a sudden, whether they're a spouse or maybe an adult child, or in your case, a grandchild, it's up to them to step up and take care of that family member. And they learn as they go because nobody teaches them how to be a caregiver. You just have to go for it, and it is very difficult, but you have learned from experience, and now that you help other caregivers, you have that experience behind you, plus the expertise and the knowledge and all of the education to share with them. So I love it that you really get it, that you understand where a particular family is coming from, and you see the big picture.
Exactly. And the crucial part is to plan. And very often, and I find this in the best of families, because it's in the best of families where they don't want to step on mom and dad's toes. Mom and dad are independent. They make their own decisions. They raised us to make our own decisions. And I'm not going to call them up one day and say, Mom, I need to watch your checkbook.
Right. That won't fly.
That won't. But also, those children weren't raised to say something like that.
True.
Because they have that respect. And that's why it's so important for us as we get older to create a plan and tweak it on a regular basis. So when we talk about a plan, it's not just, yes, you should have your documents in order. And when I say documents, I'm talking about a power of attorney so that the people you name can handle your bills for you. Fight that credit card fraud charge, which is all too common these days. Deal with the insurance company, whether it's a health insurance claim, a
Right,
long-term
because
care insurance claim.
if you're not capable or you don't have the capacity to do something like that, they don't want to talk to anybody else. And if you don't understand it, if you're an older person and you're confused or you just too stressed out to deal with it, you're kind of left out in the cold because no one's going to talk to you if you don't have that authority to represent somebody, right?
Absolutely. And I find that for many of my clients, the power of attorney, the first use of the power of attorney winds up being an insurance issue.
Okay.
Because my clients, they may not be cognitively impaired, but they're not at a point of life where they want to be on the phone, press 1 for this, press 5 for this, press 7 for that, and then be on hold for an extended period of time. So very often they turn to, let's say, their daughter that they named as their agent on the power of attorney and said, you handle this for me. I don't have time. I have to go to the golf course. My tea time is at 11, and I don't have time for this. But they can use that power of attorney. They actually have the legal authority to resolve that insurance issue. So it's not just when we're talking about cognitive impairment that a power of attorney is so important, but for anyone.
Anything. In the hospital, legal issues, day-to-day.
Absolutely.
One of the things that you have in your biography, which I think is very interesting, that you're dedicated, this is your words, dedicated to providing a holistic approach to what you call getting older law, which is the elder law. I've never heard holistic being coupled with law together, and can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure, absolutely. So law, especially in elder law or estate planning, people think of law and they're thinking documents, they're thinking statutes, it's a fancy word for laws, and rules, regulations, things of that nature. But in elder law, there's so much more to that. And it's looking at it, the use of the documents. What other information do I need? I'll give you an example. We were just talking about tech, and we were laughing how tech is changing how we do things. And there was an instant just recently, a spouse died unexpectedly. And they had gone to a estate planning attorney. All the ducks were in a row. They thought they had plans. But then the surviving spouse wanted to get into the phone.
To just
see the pictures.
Ah, yes.
The
pictures.
family photos. Today,
Yes.
we have smartphones.
Right.
And when I first started practicing, the older generation, well, their grandchildren brought them the flip phone. But nowadays, many of my older clients have smartphones, and not just the ones bought by their grandchildren. They themselves love their smartphones. They have their games. It connects them to their children who are usually across the country, grandchildren, many of them great-grandchildren. And the spouse couldn't get into the phone because they didn't have the passcode.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty, that's hard. And so what happened?
They're still struggling with it. They went down and family members have been on the phone with their provider, and it's become a problem. It turns out that the person did not have it backed up to the cloud.
And the provider, the service provider, the phone company, right, they probably don't want to give out the password because it's protected.
It's protected.
And they figure that the information on that phone is confidential and private, so they're not going to share it even with the spouse.
But this is an issue that is when you talk about areas of law, is relatively recent.
Okay.
I mean, smartphones haven't been around that long.
Right.
I mean, compared to areas of law.
Right.
And so it's things like this.
So are you saying
we
that
need
part of
to-
elder law is planning for situations like this where a spouse could get into a phone because you've talked about it and you've planned
You've
for
talked about it and planned for it.
it?
So
Who would
one-
think about that,
Who
right?
would think? And that's just an example. So when we talk about planning, it's not just legal documents. And many people don't want to bring their children in prematurely to their affairs, and I can understand that. So what I speak to a lot of my clients about, make a list of all of your bank accounts. You don't have to give it to your children now.
Okay.
Make a list. Make a copy of your driver's license. Make a copy of your other important documents. Put it all in one place, one safe place. Put all your passwords together.
There you go.
And so it's not just a passcode for a phone like we were just talking. Things like an Apple ID for those who have Apple phones. Not sure what Samsung's equivalent is, but online banking passwords, Netflix, Facebook, all of those other accounts, put that list together so that, and then tell the children or who your agent is on your power of attorney, who your loved ones are, the ones that you would want acting on your behalf. Tell them, you know what? If you need it, this is where you can find it. And then revisit that plan every year or two, or as circumstances change.
Update it.
Update it. And after 2 years, you might look at it and say, you know what, this plan is just fine. My passwords are still the same. All those tech people tell you should change your passwords.
Right.
But double check your passwords are still the same passwords. And look at it and say, you know what, I'm still doing fine. I don't need to share this just yet. But I'll remind my kids, let's say, of where they can find it.
In case something happens.
In case something happens.
You know, this was so interesting that you're talking, you mentioned Facebook. I have to tell you, this just happened to me. A very good friend of mine that I've known for a long, long time passed away
Oh, I'm sorry.
last year. It wasn't COVID, but it was brain cancer.
Oh, wow.
And he had a partner, a life partner, and they kind of took care of each other because she had health issues, he had health issues, and he ultimately passed away. And I'm on Facebook, and pops up, oh, you might want to connect with this person. And it was my friend who's been gone for probably 2 years now. And I'm thinking, why is his picture still there? Why is he popping up? Why does he still have this account? And now you're telling me this because the partner probably doesn't have the authority to take down the Facebook, to take the page off, to change it, to delete it. And unfortunately, this person's still popping up and he's deceased. And it's sad.
And there is, the social media have evolved also to give people, again, to plan, to go into their settings while they're alive and managing their own page of what needs to be done. And every platform is different. And but it is important. It's those little things we don't think of.
And I'm sure they never thought about this when he's in the hospital and
No,
he's, in
not
the
at
process
all.
of passing. And they don't even think about it, but, his sisters, his brothers, his friends still see him on Facebook. And it's just really unfortunate. And it's kind of hurtful, too, because, that the fact that they haven't done anything about it and they aren't probably able to do anything about it.
But what a friend of mine did when she was alive, her daughter, she had the right settings and had given her daughter her password. And the daughter had morphed the page, for lack of a better term, to be more of a memorial page. So the daughter now posts pictures on the anniversary of her death and things of
And
that
that's
nature,
nice.
remembering pictures.
And that's a good way to do it.
But the daughter was able to do it due to a plan.
There's the key word, plan.
Plan, that's correct.
We have planned at this time to do a commercial break.
Okay.
So we will be right back. More from Sherry Brenner, elder law attorney. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care. They have about 50 memory care assisted livings all across the United States, 10 of them right here in the state of Florida. Arden Courts would like to give you, as a family caregiver, a gift just because you're listening or watching this program, and it's called the 36-Hour Day Book. This book is highly recommended if you're a family caregiver caring for someone with some form of dementia. It gives lots of tips and information and definitions. It's really invaluable. The book is absolutely free just for the asking. So take your piece of paper and write down this email address if you'd like to get this book. The email address is delray@arden-courts.com. That's Delray, D-E-L-R-A-Y, at Arden, A-R-D-E-N, -courts, C-O-U-R-T-S.com. Tell them in your email that you heard about the free book offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show. give them your name, address, and telephone number, and they'll be very glad to mail a book right to you. And so this is something that you can refer to when you need to look something up, or if you have time, you can read it cover to cover. But it's a great book written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. It's continually being updated. Some caregivers refer to it as the Caregiving Bible. And so get your 36-hour-day book free by sending an email to delray@arden-courts.com. Today, I'm speaking with elder law attorney Sherry Brenner. Sherry is an elder law attorney right here in Boca Raton. She's been practicing for 23 years. Her company is Florida Elder Law Concepts, PA. We're talking about planning, what caregivers need to know. It's so important, and that's the key word today, I think, Sherry. We've been talking about
That's correct.
planning, because when you plan, at least if you have a plan, you can tweak it. But
Absolutely.
without a plan, you're going to really be paddling upriver.
Upstream, yes.
Right. So we talked about a lot of things that caregivers need to do. And one of the things about planning is, okay, that sounds good. I should do that. But what does that mean? How do I start planning? What's the first thing that a family or a spouse or maybe even an adult child, when they have issues of family members that either are getting older or maybe exhibiting some cognitive impairment, and they're thinking, wow, we need to, address this. What's the first thing they should do?
Okay. One of the first things that anyone over 18 should do is to put legal documents in place. In the last segment, we were talking about a lot of other details, non-legal details, like passwords for online banking. But now let's talk about the law side. So everyone who's over the age of 18 and over should have legal documents in place. Now, what do I mean by that? We're talking about power of attorney, designation of healthcare surrogate. In some states, that's called a healthcare proxy, but that has a different meaning in Florida. So a designation of healthcare surrogate, living will, a will, last will and testament, or a revocable trust. Basic estate planning documents. So let's go through each one and what it does.
So you're saying anybody 18 and over, so people shouldn't wait until they're older to do all of these things.
Correct.
But I bet most of them wait.
Most do wait. And so people turn to me, what do you mean? My grandchildren who are in college should have documents? And I say, yes. And when they're in college, more likely than not, they're going to name their parents. But when they're older and they're 40 or 50 years old, they'll change their documents. They're not going to name their parents anymore.
Right.
All of the documents that I mentioned are completely amendable and revocable. You retain that authority. When I speak with clients about these documents, I talk about my clients are in the driver's seat. They're the ones making the designation. And if they decide that that person that they have named is not going to, they're not on the same page. They're not going to agree.
Or they had a big fight
Or
and
they
now
ha-
they don't
ex-
trust them anymore.
Exactly. My client has every right to call me up. We have a meeting and say, Sherry, I need to change this. And it happens very often, especially in the healthcare area. So a designation of healthcare surrogate, where a client is designating someone or someone's, could be more than one person, to make healthcare decisions for them, and they disagree on end-of-life care. End-of-life care is a very personal issue. Everyone has their own opinion, and it's informed by many different aspects, whether it's social, religious, political, by all different aspects. It's informed by that, but it's personal. And families have a habit of disagreeing.
No, don't tell me there's such a thing as dysfunctional families.
Families disagreeing. Yes, it happens. So it's important that those people that you do name are the ones who are going to carry out your wishes.
Right.
So I have had clients. I had one client, we're going back almost 23 years now, and she comes into my office and she said, I'm a terrible mother. This is before I had college-age children. And I said, okay, this was a very odd way to start
Start
a
out.
meeting. She goes, I want these children on my power of attorney and these children on my health care, whatever. I said, okay, let's back up. Why? She said, well, those two on the power of attorney would keep me alive forever, and that's not my wish. And the two on the health care can't balance a checkbook to save their lives. And I turned to her and I said, you know, you're not the worst mother. You're the best kind of mother because you know your children.
That's true.
And you could see the love in her face discussing all of them. But she knew her children's strengths.
Yes.
And
The best person for the job.
exactly. And it was a close family. Everyone knew what she had disclosed all of this and had a family conversation, which is the next part of a plan. Not just putting your paperwork in order and leaving it at the lawyer's office for it to not be seen again until an emergency happens, is to have a conversation with the family.
And that's sometimes harder to do than
Yes.
people think because a lot of families are raised not to talk or not to talk about personal issues or not
Correct.
to share. And that's where a lot of, complications and confusion starts because they're not communicating.
That's absolutely right. So before COVID, very often I would have the whole family into my office. Yes, I would have meetings with the client themselves, but I would also have meetings at the same conference room table with the clients and their children, and we'd all talk together. Because if my clients felt, well, I don't know how to get the story started, and the children are like, well, I don't want mom to think I'm after her money, I said, I will start the conversation. It's not a personal conversation, meaning mom's not thinking you're stealing her money and you're not stepping on mom's toes.
So you're sort of moderating this, right? And you're
And
helping them, come to an agreement or an understanding.
An understanding, and it's the non-law side of things. Because documents are what they are, but it's how do we use them?
Yes.
And what are mom's wishes? What does mom see herself? Are her online platform subscriptions important to her? Do you know that she loves to binge watch Netflix? Do you have her password to make sure that she can log in or you can log in for her? That's not a legal issue,
No.
but it's a conversation and opening those lines of communication. Because very often, once those lines of communication open, they stay open. And that's absolutely crucial.
Wow. Wow. So not only are you an elder law attorney, you're like a social worker too, I think, because you're really getting into the big picture and you're
Exactly.
really bringing, all of this home, so to speak, right? And like you said earlier, you're taking the law and you're applying it to real life.
Exactly.
And-
And that's the holistic part of it.
Yes, and that conversation, having that conversation is real life. And how do your plans and your documents related to those plans, how do they fit in to your life now, to your future life, what might happen down the road? And people don't really see sometimes this big picture like this and think about all those little intricate details. But you do because that's your
what I
job.
do.
That's what you do.
That's what
Yeah.
I do. And COVID has forced all of us to rethink how we do things. Everything changed with COVID. So with COVID, I couldn't have the entire family at my conference room table. For their safety, for my safety. So started doing Zooms. Now at the beginning of COVID, a lot of my clients were very leery of Zoom, weren't comfortable with Zoom. I did a lot of conference calls, but you don't get that visual.
Right.
You don't get that connection. And while Zoom is not a replacement for in-person, but as time went on, my clients all got on Zoom and were taking cooking courses and flower arranging.
You had to do something. We're staying home, isolating, right? Zoom became very popular.
But what happened also, families were starting to talk more and seeing each other more than just a phone call or a FaceTime, because FaceTime, unless you are on your iPad, on your phone, you have to hold it. But Zoom, you're on the screen, you see people from all over the country. And I think it took time, but people became more comfortable. And so we're doing a lot more that way.
And even though COVID's lessened now, I'm
Yes,
sure
it
that
has.
it probably is continuing. So we always have to look for that silver lining, you know, in everything.
Yes,
and
that's true.
That really became beneficial to a lot of areas. So people are making a plan, they get their documents, they have the conversation. So life goes on and everybody's fine. But let's talk about the incapacity.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people, as they get older, they start having the mild cognitive impairment. It may or may not lead to an Alzheimer's type dementia, but it could.
It could.
Right? And so when someone, you had to do this with your grandfather. You went and helped him through every stage of his dementia, all the way
Exactly.
from, you know, being at home until ultimately placing into a memory care assisted living. So when someone does documents, and do you talk about that type of thing of what would happen if someone does become incapacitated? Do you go down that road, or do you wait until maybe they bring it up? Or do you give them any kind of instructions ahead of time? Do you talk about that? I'm just curious,
No,
because
absolutely.
it's just something, as we age, everybody worries about. You know, I have a friend whose mother is absolutely terrified that she's going to get Alzheimer's. I mean, she is so terrified, she just worries about it all the time. So for people like that, what would you say to someone that may or may not find themselves in that situation?
Okay. So again, it gets back to the plan.
Okay.
So when we're doing the documents, they have the capacity to sign documents, and that is a requirement. You need to know what you're doing. And
In other words, if you already have a diagnosis of dementia, you probably aren't capable, or should
maybe,
be.
maybe not.
Maybe it's case by case.
It very
to
case
be
by
able
case.
to know what you're signing.
Exactly. It's the knowledge. It's not handwriting. Your handwriting doesn't matter.
It's understanding what
Correct.
you're signing.
I've had clients ask about handwriting, and I say, well, wait till you see mine. But it's at the documents, the meetings about the documents, where we talk about the agents, we talk about giving their agents, and I call agents, the people they name on their documents, copies of the documents electronically. These days, do it all electronically. And let's tell them, this isn't a secret. Okay? You trust them to be named on documents that, let's say, you don't want them to use until you can't handle it anymore. But let them know now, so that if they were to do something, you still have the capability to say, oh, you're going to do something fishy? I'm replacing you on my documents. While you're still in the driver's seat, share that information, so that if something funny happens, you can still change your mind.
And that's good to know that you can change things, because I think one reason I've talked to
Sure.
hundreds, thousands, maybe caregivers.
Yes, you
and,
have.
And one of the things I think that prevents them from doing the documents too soon is because they don't trust that the person's going to do right by them, or
Correct.
maybe go behind their back and do something while the person still is capable of doing it themselves. And so they wait because they like, I don't want you in my business, you know, and I think that's one thing. So you really have to, like you said, think about who you're
That's
naming,
crucial.
and it's very important. It might not be an adult child. It might be a sibling that
Absolutely.
you trust more than your son, who maybe, you know, has different ideas or a different type of lifestyle. It might be your attorney, because some people have actually named attorneys as their
Exactly.
power of attorney, right? So I think that sometimes people need to think outside the box and be able to say, I will think outside the box. It's okay to think outside the box, because a lot of people don't even name family members for one reason or another. And so you talk about those types of
Absolutely. And that's the time we discuss who is the best person. You know, if my client, let's say, is a very conservative investor, you know, they've only been in banking, you know, CDs and money markets, because they did a lot of their so-called investing back when interest rates, back in the 80s, let's
things.
say.
I remember when you could get 16% on a CD. But that was a long time ago.
Yes, it was. But many of my clients were investing in those CDs. And then, let's say their son is a day trader, and they themselves are not comfortable. It's not that they don't trust him. It's just he has a different perspective on finances than they do.
Perfect example.
Just different.
Yes.
They adore their son.
Uh-huh.
They're planning on naming him on something else. But it's just the perspective and what their comfort level is. Because after all, it's their comfort level that's important.
Yes.
It's their money. It's their estate. It's their care. And they should be in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I think that's really a good example of why you pick certain people, right, to do that.
Absolutely.
Let's talk for a few minutes about the long-term care planning for people that might need help down the road to go into a place, and they need monetary help, maybe from the government. Do you help people plan that too?
I do. I do help families navigate how to pay for long-term care. And when they enter that conversation, does inform what kind of planning we can do. So, for instance, if they're doing advanced planning, we are able to do a certain type of planning and protect their assets. Or if I don't do any insurance work, I'm not licensed in insurance, I don't sell any of that, but I do work with financial advisors, and I discuss with clients, do you have long-term care insurance? And let's say they are of an age and a health to purchase long-term care insurance and a financial capability of doing so. We discuss that. And we discuss the questions to ask a financial advisor who is licensed in that industry. That's one way to help navigate the cost of long-term care. But let's fast forward. Someone who may not be ready for long-term care. It's not really, they're still on the golf course, they're still playing tennis, but they're of an age that they are unable to obtain, let's say, traditional long-term care insurance or some other products. I don't know the details because, like I said, I'm not licensed in that area.
There's certain underwriting rules that prohibit people from getting it. I think a certain age,
and certain questions
or
on the underwriting, health issues,
yes, or diagnosis of something.
Exactly. So for those where long-term care is not actually foreseeable in the near future. I mean, it should be foreseeable for all of us because we're at The older we get, the higher the risk is. There are other planning types that we can do, we can implement. It's so important to sit down and have that conversation. And because there are pros and cons to all of this, there are plenty of rules on asset protection for long-term care. There are government programs available to help defray the cost, but they are needs-based, and there are rules. The government doesn't just let you give your money away and then ask for help. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So we have look-back periods and penalty periods that we need to address, these concepts, these issues we need to discuss.
And if people don't discuss those and they try to do it on their own, I've come across people that have made some whopper of a mistake doing things that were not right or not proper, which is going to mess up their plan down the road because they didn't really understand what they were doing. They tried to do it themselves without really investigating and getting the right information. And so I appreciate what you're saying is, you know, go to the expert because it can be complicated, especially if you've got multiple families or second marriages and commingled funds and all of this. It can get kind of messy.
You're absolutely right. It can get messy, and it's usually the ones who are trying to do the right thing. It's not the ones where, you know, son or daughter decides that, well, mom's getting up there, she doesn't need the money anymore. No, those aren't the ones I'm talking about.
Right.
It's the well-intentioned ones where, let's say, they'll withdraw $10,000 from mom's account, set up a new account with just those $10,000 in their own name, and to a penny, every last dime is being used for mom's care. But then they go and apply for assistance, and they say, well, you took $10,000 out of mom's money. That's a transfer. We're going to penalize you for that.
And they say, no, but I used it all for mom.
Exactly, but it's how to explain, how to know within the rules. And that kind of scenario, we're talking about someone who, seriously, every last penny was used on mom.
Yeah.
So it's the well-intentioned for anyone who is at this stage of life or helping someone at this stage of life. Seek out assistance.
You know, someone said to me, I heard this just earlier today about, oh, you know, everybody looks forward to the golden years and they're going to live a wonderful, stress-free retirement life with no problems. And there's no such thing because as you get older, just getting older presents its own problems. And you still have to worry about your children and your grandchildren, or you might be in the sandwich generation where you're retired, but you still have parents and you still have kids. So it's complicated.
Yes.
Life is complicated. And thank goodness there are wonderful professionals out there that can help with all areas, whether it's dementia, Alzheimer's, whether it's elder law. And I want to thank you so much for being here today
Thank you.
to really share
Thank you for having
the
me.
importance
Yes.
of elder law attorney, elder law concepts, your company, which I love the name because it's Florida Elder Law Concepts. Give us your phone number. If someone wants to call your office, maybe get a consultation with you, what number can they check you out on?
Okay, my phone number is 561-245-4620.
And you have a website?
My website is, and I'll spell it out, it's F as in Frank, L as in Larry, E as in Edward, L as in Larry, C as in Charlie.com.
All right.
FLELC.com or Florida Elder Law Concepts.
There you go. Just Google it. Florida Elder Law
Law Concepts. Google it.
Sherry Brenner. Don't forget, if you need something, you have a question, call her office. She will be glad to help you. Her assistant, Sydney, would be glad to help you. And I, again, thank you so much for being
Thank you,
here.
Marcia.
And I
Thank
want to
you
thank
so
you
much.
all for checking us out
Thank you,
today.
everyone.
And we'll be back next week, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time with another Caregiver Solution Info Show. Thank you so much. You all have a good evening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more